Everybody, we're here today undertaking an IRIS conversation with More Than Welcomes. Ruth Forecast and Sharon Baker have agreed to join me as a celebration of Refugee Week and our launch of the Community Sponsorship Evaluation Reports. So it'd be great, Ruth, perhaps if you could tell us a little bit about More Than Welcomes, what it is and how it came into being and what you do.
Well, how it came into being is not really what it's ended up being. We started in 2014 campaigning to get our council to take 12 Syrian families under the UK government Syrian resettlement programme, which we thought would be very easy as it was a government scheme. Long story, but we ended up being a campaigning group for 2 or 3 years until we finally applied for a family under community sponsorship. I never foresaw when we started it that we would actually be so intensely supporting families, but we've actually ended up supporting 2 community sponsorship families who we've resettled in Malvern, and also 3 other families that were resettled by Worcestershire County Council. When we started doing it, we could never have envisaged that we would be where we are now. It's been pretty tough at times, but I've absolutely no regrets about ever doing it. I'd say it's been a delightful experience in many, many ways.
And you're still there 6 years later. Sharon, you joined a little bit later, didn't you?
I did join a little bit later. My background is languages, including teaching English as an additional language. So I just asked to be added to a list in the hope that at some point in time families would be accepted and that there would be a role for English teachers.
So you came in once there was a need for someone to support with language?
Pretty much, yes.
And one of the findings in our project is that, you know, the need for this extra provision, not just standard ESOL classes, but also you know, one-to-one tuition and tailored tuition to particular needs. Is that how you work?
Absolutely. We were very fortunate in as much as that we'd already been able to assemble a team of English tutors actually before the families arrived. So we were able to, even having identified tutors, which went through quite a recruitment process. You know, we were looking for people with qualifications and with experience with English teaching. And then we will put together a few training events for the teachers, because obviously this was going to be very significantly different, teaching English to not as a foreign language, but for everyday living and crucial language right from the first day that the families arrived. So we were very keen to talk around all the issues that would be linked to having a background as a refugee, recognising the types of trauma that might be there, and also highlighting the areas of your standard English language curriculum where we would need to be extra sensitive. For example, one of the first things you are encouraged to do when you start learning a language is to talk about your family. So we felt it very, very important to highlight those different areas.
One of, you know, the way that community sponsorship groups work, of course, is very face-to-face, lots of contact with refugee families. I know there's a lot of teaching that happens, language teaching that happens in people's homes. So all of that changed, of course, didn't it, in March this year, when we entered lockdown. What's it been like for the refugee families that, you know, the 5 refugee families that you support? What's life been like for them in lockdown?
One of the first things that we did do as soon as we went into lockdown was to ensure that all of the families had the technology and the knowledge to work with Zoom. So, and not just from the point of view of language learning, but from the point of view of sort of general contact and to ensure that other volunteers involved with the families could continue to support them.
And I would say, actually, that the worst case scenario, which I thought would occur, hasn't really occurred. They've all been very, very willing to engage with English lessons on Zoom. They've embraced the technology, which is very challenging when you're not computer literate and you're not illiterate in English. They've all been absolutely brilliant, and these 5 families have got very differing levels of education in the first place. They've been very positive, really, and we've had to do amazingly difficult things through Zoom, arrange transfer of internet, all done from my home or somebody else's home through Zoom. Things that were difficult before are 10 times more difficult, but managed, actually. And I think when you say what's it been like for the families, I can't speak for them, but a Syrian friend of mine who knows the families well said, don't worry too much, Ruth, because what they're going through now, they've been through much, much, much worse, and they just see this as a temporary blip. So I find it hard to see it like that, but we've always greeted on Zoom with smiles and how are you? Isn't that right, Sharon? We've just...
It absolutely is. And although now, since September, there is involvement where English language learning is concerned from the local colleges. We have continued with face-to-face, not face-to-face lessons, but one-to-one lessons, small group lessons. And we've extended that to the children as well, because obviously one of the difficulties for the children not going to school already is not having contact with other young people, other children, but the learning. And schools are giving homework and other work and websites, etc., for children to work with, but that is such a challenge for the parents to support the children with that. So we now have a team of homework buddies as well, alongside our English teachers. So ironically, there is quite a timetable for the individual families, because obviously if they've only got 1 or 2 computers and a certain level of internet access, then there's quite some timetabling to do, really, within the families and from the point of view of Malvern Welcomes. One
of my major concerns, 2 of the families have actually, because of health reasons, had to isolate the whole family. And that's also meant we've had to do their shopping and go and collect prescriptions. Big challenges when someone's been ill and needed some medical attention, because you can't go to the GP, they can't phone the GP because that's difficult language-wise. So serving as an intermediary there's lots of scope for misunderstanding. But I have to say, Jenny, that the receptionists at the surgeries and the receptionists at the schools have been absolutely amazing, over and above the call of duty.
And you have a team of people who can help with these things?
It's been challenging because a lot of our volunteers, majority of our volunteers, are older, I have to say, retired people like myself. Several have had to self-isolate, so we just don't have the people who are out and about to do things at the moment. So that's been that will continue to be a challenge.
Within our study, we identified that in some places, refugees experience a high degree of social isolation already, so they feel quite lonely and disconnected. In what way have you been able to support people to feel connected despite the fact that they are in fact now locked down?
We contact them, I think they're contacted several times a week. I'm fairly confident that there's at least 3 or 4 little chats. It might just be a WhatsApp conversation, but they have plenty of contact with us. And now that the lockdown's easing, they're actually seeing each other quite a lot. They're going out for walks together. The families that didn't have to isolate have been very frightened, and maybe culturally it's not something they do to go out for walks, and they haven't been out much, whereas normally they'd go out to the shops and go for walks. And you know, they've got children, it's not very good for them at all to be indoors all the time. So I've been pleased this last week to hear they've met up and had coffee in each other's gardens, that sort of thing. The big challenge is to keep up to date with the very confusing government information and feel that we should be relaying it to them, but not, I'll be quite frank, not being very confident in the information instructions we're given in the first place. But we have found, one of our volunteers found Doctors of the World, very good. They've got a website and they have the information, it's a UK government information in Arabic, so that's
30 different languages.
and Kurdish.
I mean, just to wrap up, obviously the community sponsorship scheme is going to continue in the UK, and once resettlement starts up again, there'll be a relaunched community sponsorship programme with the refugees arriving now additional to the UK refugee target. So we expect to see an expansion of community sponsorship in the UK. What do you think you've learned in this period, you know, through the lockdown, about supporting refugees that you might take forward?
I need to think about that one. I mean, certainly the regular contact, that's felt really important. I've learned that of the resilience of the families we happen to have in Malvern, definitely. I don't know, do you have any thoughts on this, Sharon? What have we learned?
Well, I suppose because of already I live at quite a distance from Malvern. I'm within Malvern Hills District Council, if you like, but I am just inches from the border with the and so from my point of view, I think what we have been able to embrace in terms of digital resources, we need to continue. From the point of view, it offers the opportunity for volunteers to perhaps support youngsters with their homework, even when they do go back to school, for example, in a way that might not have been possible in a face-to-face situation. So I think we shouldn't forget how useful digital technology has been and how it can continue to be useful. And I would say that it is really, really important for families to have the means to use these digital resources. So it's crucial that families actually have a computer, for example.
Well, thank you very, very much for your time, and you know, for all the work that you put into Malvern Welcomes. And I wish you the best of luck continuing with your work to support refugees to resettle in the UK.